विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते रमाकांत नामिने नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद राधे जय 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 राधे जय जय दामोदर राखी वर्धन वेश हरि निष्कृत वृंदावि दामोदर राखी वर्धन वेश हरि निष्कृत वृंदावि जय राधे जय जय माधव वृषभानुदाही नव शशिले ललिता शांति रमित विश्वा वृषभानुदाही विश्वभानुदाही नव शशिले ललिता सखी रमित विश्वा विश्वभानुदाही नव शशिले जय राधे Karuna kurumai, karuna bari, sanata sanatana, paramita charite. Karuna kurumai, karuna bari, sanaka sanatana paramita charite. Karuna kurumai, karuna bari, sanaka sanatana paramita Jaya Radhe, Jaya Jaya, Radhe, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashoda Mandana Yashoda Nandana Yamuna Srimani's Divine Grace, Shri Bhaktisiddhanta Swami, Shri Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnavarind ki, Gaur Premanande. This evening I'll be returning to a PowerPoint, but this morning will be without. Continuing on the theme from yesterday and this weekend is taking shelter of the holy name. Are we good?
Yes.
Okay. Taking shelter of the holy name. That's our life. I mean, it should be our life. Our life has been something else. And to switch to life number 2 in the same lifetime, that's takes a little effort. But it's natural, completely natural. Having our relationship with Krishna is totally natural. And not having a relationship with Krishna is very uncomfortable. But there's a lot of jivas in this material world. According to the scripture, 1/4 of the total living entities that are innumerable. So how do you divide 1/4 into unlimited, but 1/4? Just gives an idea. That are without a relationship with Krishna. And who can say how many countless living entities are in the Brahmajyoti? According to one description of what the Brahmajyoti is, it's packed up living entities. Little sparks. Where individuality is suspended, relationship with Krishna is suspended, no devotional service is suspended. Without service to Krishna. How many? So service to Krishna is very special, and the Maha Mantra is specifically, we were hearing yesterday from the first verse of Sikshastaka, that it awakens progressively that relationship with Krishna, the mood of loving service to Krishna. That's the Shreya message, the inclination to serve Krishna and knowledge of the object further awakens, Vidyavadhu Jivanam, and so forth. There's obstacles, and main obstacle is mind. The mind can be our best friend or the greatest obstacle, the stubborn obstacle. The Chaita Darpana Marjanam, beginning of the Sikshastaka, verse 1, was having some exchange with a devotee yesterday on the advent of Lord Krishna. And just to review a little bit, before Krishna was born, there were 7 other sons of Devaki. And the first 6 sons of Devaki that were killed by Kamsa. And I'm going to read Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on all of that. Specifically the verse that says, Krishna called Yogamaya and requested Yogamaya, the 7th child of Devaki in the womb of Devaki is Sankarshan. And please transfer him to the womb of Rohini. So then there's a nice purport. I'll say it and then I'll read what it says, what Vishwanath has written. It's in one sense symbolic, in another sense it's literal. The 6 sons represent or are, either way you can take it, the 6 enemies, Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moha, Mada, Matsarja. The enemy is of a living entity. The enemy is of a living entity. We have enemies. That's, our contamination. It's ourselves. What's inside is the enemy, not outside. And Kamsa represents fear. Devaki was afraid of her wicked brother, Kamsa. So in fear, the arrangement was made that Kamsa would come and kill the 6 sons. Not nice service, right? Kill Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moha, Mada, Matsarja, but it's because her intensity, this is Devaki, she's pure devotee personified as Vasudeva and Devaki, and Yashoda and Nanda are. So in her pure devotion, taking shelter of Krishna, these enemies are removed from her, and then comes Balaram or Sankarshan. And it's needed for Sankarshan to prepare the place for Krishna's appearance. So when we're chanting this Chaita Darpana Marjanam, you can detail a little bit. I mean, the dust accumulated for years together is the common translation. And another way of looking at it is, we want Krishna to appear. And of course, not just stamp our foot and say, Krishna, hurry up. I'm waiting. We can't hurry Krishna. That's a pun. We can hurry Krishna. We can't hurry Krishna. And then Krishna appears because everything is now clean. Chaita Darpana Marjanam, like that, the image of the cleansing of the Gundicha temple to make the place very nice so that Lord Jagannath will come. He'll be encouraged to come. When some place is clean, it's inviting to come. I'm repeating some of the message, but embellishing a little bit. So we want to make our heart fit for Krishna to appear in our heart. So he can appear in our heart wherever he likes. He can, we can, like Dhruva, we can see him, or Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena. Yam Shama Sundara Chinchabana Sarupam. He can show his Shama Sundar form. He can come before us. He can do whatever he likes. But his appearance in our heart means bhakti. And Krishna appears where there's Shuddha Bhakti. However he appears. He may appear to disappear. And then there's the feelings of separation from him. There's this nice teaching that says, forget the scriptural reference specifically, but it says, in the stage of prema, there's never an attainment of, the word is used as satisfaction. Like, or satiation is another word. Like enough. Like when you eat and, at a certain point, it's enough. Or you're drinking water. Even when it's a hot day, at a certain point, that's enough. No, thank you, no more. And after a while, then you're thirsty and hungry again. But in a relationship with Krishna, there's no satiation. It's never, that's enough, thank you. So get used to it. To the degree that you're hankering for that relationship with Krishna, to that degree you're going to hanker more for the relationship with Krishna. That it's never satiated. That's the prema stage. We're not there yet. So there's kind of weak hankering. And there's something in between us and that strong hankering, and that's the impurities of heart, the enemies, six, or anarthas, or however you want to detail it and describe it. And then, even when that's done, it's not over yet. We need spiritual strength. We need Balaram. So I'm going to read now. This connects with Sikshastaka 1. And the appearance of Sankarshan, the seventh child of Devaki, and Krishna's request for Yogamaya to transfer him, because he has an important service after Krishna appears. It's 10 to 15. If you want to look it up later. Vishwanath's commentary. How is it possible that the 6 material children could appear first in the womb of Devaki, who is the internal spiritual energy of the transcendental Lord? Just as the material universes exist within the Supreme Lord, but do not contaminate the Lord, the 6 children could exist within Devaki without contaminating her. This is proven in Gita 9.2. Mastani sarvabhutani na chaham teshu avastita. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. Paragraph. The conjunction of material and spiritual in Krishna's pastimes is there to illustrate the methodical nature of bhakti. While devotees perform sadhana bhakti in the form of hearing and chanting about Krishna, they also enjoy the 6 material sense objects, which is a secondary effect of bhakti. At that time, the devotee cries out pitifully, "Oh, Krishna!" Because of this enjoyment I will fall into the dark well of material existence. That's in the sadhana stage. Paragraph. When a devotee shows fear of material enjoyment, gradually the tendency to enjoy matter subsides because bhakti has awakened a little. Then bhakti in the form of hearing and chanting Krishna's names, glorifying his transcendental forms, qualities, and pastimes, and serving the Lord in various ways becomes prominent. Finally, Krishna himself, the ocean of all wonderful forms and qualities, appears within the devotee. Ta-da! Curtain comes back. There I am. He was there all the time. Bhakti is Shuddha Sattva, pure goodness, by nature, and it directly manifests the Lord. The Shruti says, Bhaktir evainam darshayati. Translation, devotion makes the Lord reveal himself. Paragraph. As it is said that Marichi appeared from the mind, one of the sons of Brahma, mental son, he can be considered the incarnation of the mind. Marichi's 6 children are the 6 objects of the senses: sound, touch, form, taste, smell, and thought. That's the 6 senses, the mind. Since Devaki possesses the power to make the Lord appear, she can be considered the incarnation of bhakti. Kamsa can be considered the incarnation of fear. As it is often said, quote, out of fear of Kamsa, unquote. Just as fear of the material world removes the 6 sense objects from the womb of bhakti, so Kamsa destroyed the 6 children of Devaki. Last paragraph. Krishna prema, which is characterized by intense service to the Lord, necessarily appears in the womb of bhakti after the desire for sense objects is extinguished. Similarly, Ananta, the personified form of service to the Lord, appeared as the 7th child of Devaki. As Sri Krishna himself appears after Prema Bhakti appears, so Bhagavan himself appeared as the 8th child of Devaki after Shesha appeared. Pretty nice, huh? We're privileged, we're fortunate to have been gifted bhakti by such a benevolent and focused deliverer of bhakti. Our founder Charya and the representatives of our founder Charya, they're carrying some particles of his magnanimity, who's carrying the cyclic successions of Lord Chaitanya's magnanimity. That's where it's all coming from. And it behooves us to recognize the gift, and recognizing the gift, it's an opportunity to not just break the cycle of birth and death, but far more than that, to restore our relationship with Krishna. And the primary means for that is the chanting process. And that's just like the very beginning, that Sikshastaka 1 is kind of a summary of the whole thing. It's everything is there. And then the other 7 are taking the subject further, expanding in a deeper fashion. So Sikshastaka 2 is not exactly these excellences, but it's specifically describing two things: the mercy that the name has, the mercy, the abundant mercy within the name, and describes in different ways that abundant mercy. And then the second is, unfortunately, I know all these things, this and this, I have no attraction, non-raga. I have no attraction because I'm filled with distraction. And it's not just distraction, it's distraction by distraction. And distraction by distraction by distraction. You're really far from raga, attraction. It's a nice, an enthusiastic attraction for the name because we're distracted, even though we know so much. So there's this where we are, what we know, and this big gap in between, big gap. And we want to close the gap. Not like get frustrated because I've been chanting for X amount of time and I'm not there yet. I had a conversation like that recently. I'm not there yet. And just like they were focused on, I'm not there yet. It was like, the enthusiasm is maybe inhibited by this negative emotion that says, I'm not there yet. It's good to know we're not there yet and to be enthusiastic because Krishna's merciful. And then Sikshastaka 3 is a super important message for sadhakas, the non-raga folks that we're chanting, we know, and we're way down here. How do you get beyond where you are and to closer to where you want to go? So Sikshastaka 3 is important. We'll be discussing that this evening. And I wanted to read a really short message that comes from Bhaktisiddhanta on, let's see here, on this talk. So the heading is Cry Out to Krishna for Help. Learning to cry out to Krishna for help. This is Bhaktisiddhanta's writing. Sri Gaurasundara explained that to genuinely call out for Bhagavan, one has to be more humble than a blade of grass, Trinadapi Sunichena. We cannot cry out for someone until we have accepted our own insignificance in relation to that person. Just a reminder before I read further. He's speaking from realization. We speak from, repeating the words of our predecessor acharyas. The realization is maybe, 0.5% or something. But he chanted 3 times 64 rounds every day for 9 years. Let's say it again. Not just 64 rounds, 3 times 64 rounds every day for 9 years. That's otherworldly. Worldly folk can't even. So he's speaking, he's instructing us from that place of realization. Just as a reminder. We beg for assistance when we are forced to acknowledge our helplessness. Whenever we find ourselves incapable of completing a task on our own, we are left with no choice but to seek another's help. Alone, I cannot complete a task. that requires 5 people to accomplish. Paragraph. Sri Gaurasundara has instructed us to genuinely cry out for Bhagavan, which means he, that's Gaurasundara, has urged us to solicit Sri Bhagavan for help. This we have heard from Srila Gurudev. However, if I cry out to him with the intention of involving him in service to me, or if I petition him for the purpose of accomplishing any task, my cries lack the real humility of Trinadapi Sunichena. Real humility is never found in an external show of humility, which is actually mere duplicity. Calling out to Bhagavan in the mood of being his master, expecting him to obey like a servant, is ineffective. He does not hear such a call because he is supremely independent and fully conscious. Consequently, he is not controlled by anyone. Until a person's egoism establishes roots in sincere, non-duplicitous humility, his prayers will not reach Bhagavan, who is fully independent. Paragraph. A person who is more humble than a blade of grass may cry out to Bhagavan, but unless he is endowed with the qualities of patience and tolerance, his calling out will not bear fruit. If we show impatience by hankering after our own interests, our behavior is in direct opposition to the mood of Trinadapi Sunichena. If we are fully confident that Bhagavan is the, in capital letters, complete being, capital C, capital B, the complete being, and that our calling out to him will never result in scarcity, we will not experience any dearth or shortage of patience. But if I become greedy, intolerant, and restless, and if I remain adamant that I will accomplish my task on the strength of my own ability and competence, I will not be able to call out to Bhagavan in the true sense. Paragraph. If we are excessively vain, we cannot properly call out to him. What happened here? And also, if we try to annihilate our real self-interest, then we will not be able to cry out to Bhagavan properly. Often, I think that I am obliging him by my prayers and therefore engage in other activities in which I don't need to ask for his help. This mentality also indicates the absence of tolerance. Paragraph, final paragraph. Therefore, we require a guardian to save us from such tendencies until we become qualified to sincerely pray in the mood of Trinadapi Sunichena. His shelter and support are necessary to shield us from such unfavorable inclinations. Srila Narottam Das Thakur says, Ashraya laya bhaje Krishna nahi tara tyaje arasabha mara akarana. Or, one who performs bhajan under the shelter of personalities who are the abode of love for Krishna is not neglected by Krishna. Semicolon. Everyone else lives in vain. He's like up there. Prabhupada said on at least one occasion that I directly heard him say, I forget the percentage, 80% more lenient than my Guru Maharaj. And still, Prabhupada could be very, intense when required, but in general, very lenient. Not that he wasn't pointing to the way of Srila Bhakti, but kind of like dealing with incompetent children. He was recognizing their incompetence and quite lenient because of their incompetence. But the goal was not different, and the means to reach the goal was not different. And the standard was, made simple and accessible. But, Bhaktisiddhanta is very strict. And with his strictness, Krishna reciprocated by sending him a luminary, Srila Prabhupada, his disciple, and to carry forward his mission. So, for all persons in the Hare Krishna movement, he's our principal Shiksha Guru, and he's the one, Prabhupada, is the one we all should be taking shelter of, while we're also taking shelter of others who are representatives of him or representatives of his representatives and so forth. This nice teaching of we have multiple Shiksha Guru personalities in our lives. But so the bearer of Shuddha Bhakti can give Shuddha Bhakti. And others can be carrying some semblance of Shuddha Bhakti or in the incubation stage of Shuddha Bhakti. And that's also extremely valuable. The Sadhu Sangha principle is extremely valuable. With all of this message of the strength of humility, it doesn't take away from strength. Bhaktisiddhanta was strong, and he spoke strongly. Like the incident that took place before he went to Mayapur under his father's order to chant 1 billion names. It took 9 years to complete the vrata. He was confronting a Babaji that was living in Puri at the time, and that Babaji had made his residence by Haridas Thakur's samadhi. You familiar with this? No? Huh? I'll explain. Contemporary with Bhaktivinoda Thakur, there was a very celebrated Babaji. So many persons looked up to him as, a perfect soul. And there were 2 objections that Bhaktisiddhanta had to what he was doing. He didn't teach the Mahamantra, which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did and Haridas Thakur did, but he created his own mantra. And in that mantra, there was rasabhas, and Bhaktisiddhanta took exception to both. He didn't take Mahaprabhu's Mahamantra, from scripture and from Mahaprabhu's lips and his followers, he made his own, but called himself a follower of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which was really irritating to Bhaktisiddhanta. And he had another teaching, and that is his chief follower. He was teaching a different practice that's like ridiculous. He had his chief disciple dress as a gopi because it was the way to train him up to become a gopi, called Saki Beki. And Bhaktisiddhanta laid into him. And it caused an uproar because a lot of people in Puri saw him as Siddha Purush, perfected soul. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta had different styles. And Bhaktisiddhanta was advised by his father, you should just go to Mayapur and chant Hare Krishna. So he did. Took a vow. Took 9 years. And in taking that vow, he showed many things. But one of the things that he showed was, unlike those that were imitating the Goswamis in Vrindavan and becoming Babajis, but not qualified to be like the Goswamis were, beyond the 4 orders of Varnashram, because that's an indication is they're not within the 4 orders. He was a brahmachari, but showed he had the qualification to be beyond the 4 orders. But then following that, on the order of his spiritual master, Gorkishore and Bhaktivinoda, he accepted sannyas, which was within the 4 orders, for the mission of preaching. So his writings, even when he was chanting 3 times 64 rounds, 192 rounds every day for 9 years, he still had time for writings. And who can imagine the place he was when he was writing his writings? And then subsequently, when he was traveling and doing what he was doing to spread the Hare Krishna movement, which he gave a certain name, but the model was what Prabhupada accepted and established ISKCON by the same model. And that's our legacy. And we're, struggling sadhakas that don't have the samskaras, the previous qualifications that Bhaktisiddhanta had and many of his followers had, but not too many of his followers achieved that same state that Bhaktisiddhanta achieved, that he was giving the teachings for. So same for us, the door is open for everyone, regardless of background. That's so. This weekend is a ramp up your practices of chanting Hare Krishna, the quality and depth of your chanting Hare Krishna. So these are messages meant to support that, largely as scriptural, but also lives of great personalities that have done so. The attainment is high. And we're down here somewhere. But we just keep moving towards that attainment, understanding what are the steps, what are the elements, nurture the elements and continue making steps with faith. And this evening we'll hear more about these 4 Sikshastaka 3 points. He just covers 2, humility and tolerance. The other 2 are also extremely important. Then Kirtaniya Sadahari, to Kirtaniya Sadahari, as he was doing, there has to be at least taste, to continually chant. Great thirst, Krishna, a thirst for the nectar of the holy name. There's many things to say about improving our chanting of the holy name, but I think I'll stop with that. It's 45 minutes into our topic, and let's see if there's some discussion. Anyone in the room would like to speak first, and then we'll go to the online devotees.
One of the points of Bhaktisiddhanta comment was that one achieves non-duplicious humility. That's when the Lord can hear his prayer. So on that, can you elaborate?
Well, yeah, it's Bhaktisiddhanta language. It's not that if you're not on that Shuddha Sattva platform, he won't hear you. Who's on that Shuddha Sattva platform? He hears prayers. It's not futile. But the fullness, or let's say proportionate to the non-duplicitous nature, in proportion to, then the reciprocation is more, up to the point of complete, where he then gives himself. Otherwise, he can readily give other things. The message is to focus on the means to reach the goal. If humility is required, then let's know what real humility is. And to understand what real humility is, you point to some things where it's not real humility. So then it's mixed humility or cosmetic humility, not complete humility. So stay focused on the goal, because we want mercy. We require it. Okay? By the way, this little passage that I read should be sent out to people in the mailing list here. Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, we need a lot of mercy to reach that level in terms of our humility, or be able to cry out for Krishna. But in our current stage, I mean, our effort is probably not enough. What we are doing right now, not our needs, certainly not. So how do we, take that leap? Because it might be.
It's not a leap, it's steps. You take steps. And one of the, this is my response to the how-to, is you make efforts that are sincere, genuine efforts. And when you make such efforts, then the realization is stronger. My effort is not enough. Like that person at the home we visited, and I'm not there yet. Okay, that teaches you need lots of mercy. The good news is Krishna is merciful. Yeah, well, Krishna is merciful, but I'm not there yet. Okay, reach out to understand the nature of the person who you're reaching out to, and call for mercy. So it's little steps, so the obstacle is false ego that's contaminating the mind, that says I can do it, and without embellishing that further. We're all familiar with that territory. So that's what we're accustomed to, that's our conditioning. But then you try to do something that's not within the material field, but is within the spiritual field. You can't do it alone. and false ego's in the way, but it diminishes false ego by making a sincere effort to connect on a spiritual platform. And then more commonly, this is, an educated guess, efforts that people make are weak and intermittent. So we don't sufficiently, because this heading is learning to call out for Krishna for help. So it's intermittent and weak. But how to make it stronger is sincerely try. There's an instruction and follow the instruction. And when we do that, we'll realize I can't do this alone. Anyone else?
But that word Sudurlabha Prasanna, it kind of discourages, like it's so rare to have such personality. What was that? The highest goal for a spiritual attainment is to give a life vision. But again, the verse is Sudurlabha Prasanna. It's very rare to have such kind of thing. So
Stand close to those that have it, and it becomes your quality.
very difficult.
Yes, it is. Confirmed. Now, what? Find those that have and associate, take shelter. Remember, hear, chant, describe, pray. And then your capacity increases a little bit. And so forth. Progress is incremental towards that which is very rare. Yeah.
I have a question. How do I become steady in my bhakti? Meaning sometimes work takes priority, like I'm more focused on work and bhakti becomes secondary, but sometimes bhakti is more important than focus on more work, meaning chanting, engaging myself in devotional service.
And neglect your work.
Shifting. Yeah.
Well,
Keep shifting.
What's the cause of unsteadiness? Anarthas. When nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtati. That verse gives the answer to your question. The abhadras, or the anarthas, that's the unsteadiness. That's the cause. The other side of that is it's not that the anarthas are totally eradicated yet, but steadiness is where they're sufficiently eradicated such that that which is on this other side of the pan scale, that the bhakti, becomes so strong, it can't act. It's still there, but there's dominant and recessive. It's sufficiently strong. So we need strength. His name is Balaram. We need strength, so we call out Sankarshan, like this text that we discussed. We need strength to get there. And then with that strength, then these other anarthas can also be eradicated. The 6 enemies and so forth. So it's gradual. It's gradual. You have something?
I have a question for myself, Maharaj.
In relation to the topic, or is it off topic?
Related with the topic.
Okay, good.
I was just thinking, And when I listen to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, how many lifetimes is it going to take for me to get there? And is that a discouraging?
Oh, it depends on you. It depends on you. No. If you don't do it, how many lifetimes? What's important to you? So it's up to you. Discouraging or enlightening.
But sorry, that's really the whole of what you just said. That's the reason. This is not the first time I heard the Sikshastaka, of course. You know,
Sure.
I have heard multiple times.
Sure.
But each time I hear, I'm hoping that I will remember maybe a fraction of it and implement it so that I can make progress.
Read in Nectar Devotion, Ashabandha, that section. Hope against hope. Now there's a list of my disqualifications, and I'm shameless, I'm asking anyways. You're my only hope. That's an impetus, is the merciful nature of Krishna. Anyone else in the room? And we're going on to the online questions.
We have 4 questions from the people.
Really?
Wow.
First one is, if japa is what to do, is Srimad Bhagavatam why to do, and our acharyas how to do?
That's a nice way to look at it. I think there's multiple other ways to look at it. That's a nice way. Go ahead.
Second question, is japa the essence and fountainhead of all our expressions of love and service to Krishna?
Yeah. There's others also. The Bhagavatam goes with the name.
Third question, if I'm having a difficulty picking up, holding, or rolling beads, does it mean that I'm seeing something more valuable in the world?
I don't know, maybe you have crippled hands.
Fourth question, with the obstinate mind is beginning, can the mind be bribed or cheated to take the right and lasting path?
Well, yeah. That something comes to mind, Prabhupada's story of a thief that we heard was sitting in an audience, and he heard some Hari Katha, and he heard about, Krishna has so many jewels, so he went to Vrindavan to find Krishna with his jewels. And Krishna showed himself, and the thief then said, "Can I have some of your," he buttered him up and said, "Can I have some of your jewels?" And Krishna said, "Oh, Mother Jasoda wouldn't like that. I can't give you my jewels." But because of his intense desire to see Krishna, even with a bad intention, Krishna tricked him, and he became a nice devotee by seeing Krishna.
Next question is from Vishalaksha Prabhu. In what mood one should chant the holy name of Sri Krishna during the chanting, and also which is the primary offense in chanting, and how should it be avoided while striving towards chanting purely with faith?
This is a big topic. It's like too big, but I'll touch on some of it. The bad elephant offense, there's 2 that Prabhupada points to: sinning on the strength of chanting and neglecting the instruction of the spiritual master and defending a Vaishnava. Actually, it's 3. All 3 is Maha Aparad. All of them. Sitting on the strength of chanting sometimes gets, the #1 award for greatest offense. But it's not just avoid the #1, and we want to be careful with everything. A simple answer is just like this question before. Here again, and here again, here again, these teachings of Lord Chaitanya specific to the chanting of the holy name. And like this nice description we heard, Bhaktisiddhanta said that, association with one who is beyond those defects of pride and absence of tolerance, association with those persons gives us the capacity to follow properly. And our founder Acharya is that principal person. So everyone should be eager to understand him, hear about him, remember him, read his books, hear his classes, stay connected.
Next question is from Satyavrataguru. He asks, when I introspect my heart, there is always some duplicious humility. On a day-to-day basis, how can I refine myself?
Well, introspection and prayer. Recognize it when it manifests. Or, if it hasn't manifested, it means it's there anyways. But so when it appears, you recognize it. What are the symptoms? And you make deliberate, steps in the other direction. And to do that, overcome our anarthas requires effort and mercy. That's the short answer. And to recognize that duplicitous humility is there, that's a big step in itself. Most people don't recognize it for different reasons. So recognize, make steps, prayer. Go ahead.
Next question is from Rajendra Prabhu. He asks, you said that even though we are chanting in a prayerful mood, we're thinking ourselves insignificant, but asking something temporary that is not familiar. How is that? If one is distressed and not able to focus on the name, is it not appropriate to ask Krishna to remove that burden?
Well, what's appropriate is both. You make efforts and you ask Krishna's help. Effort and mercy again. That's it. He's got another one too. No?
Yeah. Next question is from Nanda Prabhu. Instruction on the acceptance of our smallness fuels enthusiasm to connect to the holy name.
Yes.
And that is inspired.
Good.
So does Guru and Krishna lovingly accept our honest striving position in spite of our varied limitations?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. More?
Yes. Next question is from Rukmamati Devaki. What should be our goal while chanting Japa?
Krishna. Shelter. Shelter of Krishna.
Next question is from Prakash Narayan Govinda.
With a desire to be in service to him. Shelter of Krishna with a desire to be in service to him eternally. Go ahead.
Next question is from Prakash Narayan Govinda. When appreciating Srila Prabhupada's spiritual gift to us, do we have to strive to get a similar level of purity and service and realization as Srila Prabhupada to fully reciprocate back for his gift?
Yes.
What are symptoms of a person who is fully appreciative of Srila Prabhupada?
They give their body, mind, and words without reservation to his service.
One more from Amara Devdasi. How do we chant or do anything from the heart?
I invite her to send me a little note, and when I receive it as the reminder, I'll send her the like 16 different seminars on that topic, and she can listen to the seminars on that topic. Okay. Okay.
One more from Ravindra Yaram Prabhu. He asks, the most impossible task of Bhaktisiddhanta is astonishing. Is it that he is doing it very fast and in the mind?
I don't know how he did it. It wasn't in the mind. It was because he teaches audible. So how he did it, I don't know. But it's the same vrata that Haridas Thakur did. The math is really simple. If you, if it takes you, or it takes a devotee, 2 hours to chant 16 rounds, then to chant 64 rounds takes 4 times that. And to chant 3 times that, that's 24 hours. So he must have chanted his rounds in less time than we normally take. Or even people, there's some people that chant swiftly, more swiftly than that. I don't. So, it wasn't, how he did it, I don't know.
One more question from Krishnapa Prabhu. He asks, I was listening to a class by His Holiness Bhaktisiddhanta Swami, where he stated that secondary rasa, such as bhaya, fear, are there to enhance one of the 5 primary rasas. Kamsa was always fearful of Krishna. So what primary rasa was the evil-minded Kamsa?
He didn't have one. It wasn't a secondary rasa for Kamsa. He was, inimical, period. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada ki?
Yeah.